At first glance, the story of a nation seems measured in borders, armies, and economies. Yet the true resilience of a state is rarely defined by its power on maps or its capacity to wage war. Sometimes the greatest challenges are invisible: the erosion of trust, the collapse of social cohesion, and the moral reckoning that follows collective failure. Germany in 1945 faced precisely this crisis, a nation devastated not only by bombs and bullets, but by the moral and psychological consequences of a regime that had led millions into catastrophe. Today, we'll explore how Germany rebuilt trust after total defeat, how it confronted its past, reconstructed its institutions, and reimagined its national identity. This is a story of ethical reconstruction, societal resilience, and the painstaking journey from shame to legitimacy. Welcome to Nations and Notions. I'm Professor Elias Hawthorne, and together we'll examine how values, ethics, and collective morality shape the fate of nations. Prepare to see Germany's story not just as a historical reconstruction, but as a lesson in national psychology, moral leadership, and cultural resilience. On May 8, 1945, the war that had engulfed Europe for 6 years finally ended for Germany. Hitler was dead. General Alfred Jodl signed the unconditional surrender to the Allies. But what awaited the German people was a reality more harrowing than defeat itself. Allied bombers had reduced cities across the Reich to ash, while ground combat during the final push left urban centers smoldering. Berlin, the once proud capital, became a vast wasteland. Streets buried in rubble, burnt-out vehicles lining shattered avenues, and the dead lying silently among them. The human toll was staggering. Millions of civilians were homeless. A disproportionate number of men had perished in combat, leaving women and children struggling to survive amid scarcity. Food, shelter, and basic necessities were uncertain. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of German soldiers were taken as prisoners of war across Europe and the Soviet Union, some held for over a decade. The very fabric of society, trust, stability, and governments had been torn apart. The Allies faced a moral and practical dilemma. Germany's people were both victims and complicit actors in a regime that had perpetrated unprecedented crimes. Sorting this out required meticulous investigations, interviews, and accountability measures that would culminate in the Nuremberg trials. High-ranking officials such as Hermann Göring and Albert Speer were prosecuted, with most receiving life sentences or execution. Justice was pursued not merely as punishment, but as a foundation for moral legitimacy in the post-war state. In this chaos, trust had to be rebuilt from scratch, among citizens, between populations and occupying powers, and within the structures of governments themselves. The moral geography of post-war Germany. Germany's post-war reconstruction was inseparable from its division. The Yalta Conference in early 1945 had determined the nation's fate. The Reich's pre-war borders would be partitioned into 4 sectors: France controlling the southwest, Britain the northwest, the Soviet Union the northeast, and the United States the southeast. Berlin, deep inside the Soviet sector, would also be divided into 4. Each occupying power bore responsibility for the social, economic, and political life of its sector. This arrangement was not merely administrative. It imposed ethical and political constraints that required German citizens to negotiate a new social contract. Cities destroyed by war had to be rebuilt, not only physically, but morally. Factories dismantled as reparations to Britain, France, and the Soviet Union symbolized the consequences of collective failure. a tangible acknowledgement that material wealth alone could not restore trust. Intellectual reparations, patents, scientific knowledge, and technology further reinforced the message. Responsibility and accountability were central to recovery. Even as Germans were asked to rebuild, they faced the challenge of confronting the past. Citizens were responsible for reconstructing their communities, restoring industries, and navigating the moral labyrinth of collaboration, complicity, and victimhood. This dual task, practical and ethical, became the foundation of Germany's post-war identity. Trust in the shadow of the Cold War. By 1949, Germany was formally divided into East and West, reflecting the broader geopolitical tension between the Soviet Union and Western allies. The Cold War reshaped the moral and practical landscape. East Germany, under Soviet influence, faced authoritarian oversight and ideological control. Meanwhile, West Germany, guided by Western principles, pursued reconstruction through democratic institutions and civic engagement. Rebuilding trust was not uniform. In the East, coercion often replaced voluntary compliance, undermining the psychological foundations of societal cohesion. In the West, however, ethical governance became the cornerstone of resilience. Institutions like the Bundesrepublik prioritized transparency, accountability, and citizen participation, moral legitimacy embedded in the very architecture of the state. A particularly striking aspect was the recruitment of former soldiers. Ex-Wehrmacht and even Waffen-SS members were reintegrated into both East and West Germany's new militaries. In the West, this reintegration emphasized professional conduct and legal accountability. It was not a return to old hierarchies, but a recalibration. Moral responsibility, not past allegiance, dictated the framework for service. Through these mechanisms, citizens were reminded that rebuilding Germany was as much a moral endeavor as an economic or political one. Trust was earned gradually through ethical leadership, fair policy, and the creation of shared expectations for civic behavior. Economic recovery and ethical governance. West Germany's famed Wirtschaftswunder, or economic miracle, illustrates how moral choices intersected with policy. The Marshall Plan provided material support, but the key to recovery was governance grounded in ethical principles, long-term planning, equitable resource distribution, and respect for civil institutions. Leaders like Chancellor Adenauer and economist Ludwig Erhard understood that economic rebuilding alone would not suffice. Social trust, civic engagement, and ethical governance were prerequisites for sustainable growth. Policies encouraging transparency, fair labor practices, and social welfare reinforced a psychological contract between citizens and state, a moral infrastructure that underpinned national resilience. By nurturing trust and moral literacy, West Germany transformed economic recovery into a broader project of societal healing. Cultural resilience and national identity. Beyond institutions and policy, cultural mechanisms reinforced trust. Literature, art, and public discourse addressed guilt, memory, and collective responsibility. The moral reckoning after the Holocaust and the war forced German society to confront uncomfortable truths, an act that, paradoxically, strengthened national cohesion over time. Cultural resilience was also evident in urban renewal. Towns destroyed during the war were rebuilt not just for function, but for human connection. Parks, schools, and communal spaces designed to encourage interaction, cooperation, and shared responsibility. Civic rituals, holidays, and memorials acted as moral anchors, embedding historical awareness into everyday life. In East Germany, a different model of cohesion emerged. Coercion and ideological conformity replaced voluntary trust, demonstrating that resilience built on fear is fragile. West Germany's approach proved more enduring. Ethical governance aligned with citizen psychology, creating institutions and social norms that would endure even after reunification. What can we take from Germany's story? First, national psychology matters as much as material resources. A society that has lost trust cannot be rebuilt by money or force alone. Institutions must embody ethical principles, and leaders must model moral responsibility. Second, accountability is foundational. The Nuremberg trials, reparations, and public reckoning were not merely punitive, they established a framework of legitimacy. Citizens understood that moral responsibility had consequences, and that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt only through transparency, justice, and ethical consistency. Third, cultural and social reinforcement matters. Education, art, urban planning, and community rituals all contributed to a sense of shared purpose. Trust is cultivated through repeated, visible ethical practice, not abstract ideals. Even today, Germany demonstrates that resilience is not only a function of wealth or power, but of moral infrastructure. Civic trust, institutional legitimacy, and cultural responsibility form the backbone of a stable and successful society. Moral architecture and modern Germany. As we reflect, Germany's post-war story reminds us that rebuilding a nation requires more than physical reconstruction. It demands ethical reconstruction, a recalibration of trust, and deliberate cultivation of civic morality. The country transformed defeat into an opportunity to forge legitimacy, reinforce societal values, and create institutions that would endure for generations. The lesson is universal. Prosperity and stability are fragile without trust. Authority is hollow without moral legitimacy, and resilience is impossible without ethical governance. Germany's journey from ruin to a thriving democracy is a testament to the power of deliberate moral reconstruction, national psychology, and cultural resilience. As observers of history, we must ask ourselves, how do we rebuild trust when it is fractured? How do we ensure that governance, culture, and citizenry align ethically to create lasting resilience? Germany's experience provides both a warning and a blueprint. Societies may fail spectacularly, but with moral courage, accountability, and ethical leadership, they can rise again, stronger, wiser, and more united. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Germany's remarkable post-war reconstruction. I'm Professor Elias Hawthorne, and this has been Nations and Notions, where global morals meet modern realities. If you want to explore the hidden forces shaping nations, from ethics to psychology, subscribe and join us as we examine the moral architecture of the world's societies.